Hi, I'm Abby and I am the narrative director for the game Maive.
For the game, I worked on the narrative aspect, which includes all of the dialogues that are in the game. I also wrote the poems for the stories that Maive tells. In terms of visuals, I worked on environment assets and character assets. I also did the 2D art for the stories.
Hi, my name's Keris and I'm the creative director for the game Maive. My job role includes animations, 3D models, concept arts and user interaction.
I'm Sid and I am the programmer and technical artist for the game Maive. A lot of focus that I've put into was the dialogues, making the dialogue system work very intuitively. I've focused a lot on how the camera feels and moves to give a perspective of the game.
The game is about Maive and she's a red panda who's a travelling storyteller, and in the universe we've created that means that she is chosen by a magical book that kind of has a mind of its own.
Maive is a light-hearted narrative game in which you discover the Maive's story through interactions, through talking to other NPCs and through exploring the environment.
The story is about Maive and how she left home many years ago and why she's returning now and the courage it takes for her to return. And on her journey she meets lots of different NPCs who she tells her stories to, and their stories mirror her own experiences. So with interacting with them you end up learning about her and kind of what she's been through. I was inspired by the story of the prodigal son, the biblical story of the prodigal son, because I just love that story of redemption and find it comes up again and again in loads of different stories. So my research started in fables, and while I was looking at them as a children's story at first, I actually came to realise just how universal the messages of fables are, and that's what we've put into Maive, that it's a universal story that anyone can relate to.
Another aspect of the game that I worked on was lighting and VFX, which include little things like how the pop-up bubble shows up when you talk to someone, and how the sky feels, and how the little particles like wind and leaves falling on the ground feel. And I think that makes the whole world very immersive and very real.
The main mechanic is Maive's storybook. So she meets three characters in this story. She meets a leopard gecko called Lenny, a little mouse lemur called Nomina, and a peacock called Garvit. And she tells a story to each one of them. And her story unfolds, her magic book opens and sort of projects this world out into the world that she's in. And you get to play as the characters in her book and travel through the story as those characters on the page.
We wanted the game to have clear progression for the player. We've done this by providing some notes in NPC dialogue on where to go or what to do next, and we've also included this into our berry mechanic. Berries may activate a character interaction or a cutscene that flows to the next environment.
You may or may not be able to do things based on how many berries that you've collected along the way. It just makes it a slightly more personalised experience for the player.
Maive's thoughts will also be out loud so the player can see them on the screen, and these can guide the player and tell them what they need to do next.
We have another mechanic where you get a glimpse of Maive's past by seeing her memories when you interact with certain objects or go to certain places. The whole world is sort of an uphill climb to the mountain where Maive's house is, and this is where the end of the game will take place. The hardest part about creating Maive
was the whole COVID-19 situation and having to isolate at home. This means I couldn't meet up with my team and plan what we needed to do. But thankfully, we had calls on Slack every day, morning stand-ups, just to get us into the workflow.
The project has been a wild ride for me, and the hardest part of it has been balancing the time between working and learning so that everything can be achieved in time.
The hardest part about working on Maive was definitely when lockdown started because of COVID-19 and we had to work remotely. I think as games designers we're in a really fortunate position to be able to work remotely on a technical level, but I think structuring workflow and changing the way that we did things so that we were more efficient and more organised was a challenge at the beginning, but it's something that we've really learned from. So we started doing daily stand-ups to keep ourselves on track and to keep ourselves accountable to each other, and just making sure our communication was really open because we weren't able to see each other face to face anymore.
My favourite part of working on this project has been working on the environment shaders and lighting. Through this project, I have learned how to code, and even though it hasn't been a linear path for me, I have loved working on it and iterating our ideas through the feedback that we received from the people.
My favourite part about creating Maive was designing character concepts, experimenting with their fashion and personalities, then watching them come to life as I animate them and see them within the world.
My favourite part about working on Maive has been seeing the way that other people interact with this story. I feel like my whole life I've been given gifts in the form of stories, and now I'm able to give that gift to other people, and people are enjoying the story and they're relating to it, and that's a really magical thing for me to see.